This billionaire never smiled until the intern gave him a cute lunchbox. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Everyone in the building knew the same truth, even if no one ever said it out loud. The billionaire at the top floor had never smiled, not once. Not in meetings, not in celebrations, not even when the company crossed record-breaking profits. Every morning, his black car pulled up at exactly 7:45. The doors opened. He stepped out. Perfect suit, perfect posture, perfect distance from everyone around him. People straightened their backs when they saw him coming, as if fear itself had learned how to wear a tie. Inside the glass tower, conversations lowered. Keyboards softened. Laughter disappeared. He walked through the office like a passing storm. Calm. Silent. Untouchable. No one knew much about him beyond the headlines. Self-made, billionaire, ruthless, brilliant, emotionless. He did not greet people. He did not remember names. He did not stop to ask how anyone was doing. To him, the office was not a workplace filled with human beings. It was a machine, and every person was a replaceable part. That was how it had always been. On the same morning, one floor below, a young intern stood near the copy machine, clutching a small fabric lunchbox against her chest. The zipper was slightly crooked. One corner was decorated with a tiny stitched smiley face. It looked completely out of place in a building made of steel, glass, and ambition. She had arrived early, as she always did. Not because anyone asked her to, but because she believed being early meant being serious. She believed seriousness could protect her from being invisible. Her desk was temporary. Her badge was temporary. Her future felt temporary too. The intern watched employees rush past her, holding paper cups of coffee that cost more than her lunch. She had packed her meal at dawn in a cramped kitchen, careful to measure portions, careful to make it last. Every dollar mattered. Every chance mattered. She had heard the stories about him. Everyone had. Do not look him in the eyes. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not get in his way. She did not plan to meet him. She did not plan to stand out. She did not plan anything at all. And yet, as the morning stretched on, something unexpected happened. On the top floor, behind closed doors, the billionaire sat alone in his office, staring at a screen filled with numbers. He had skipped breakfast. He always did. Hunger was an inconvenience. Feelings were distractions. The only thing that mattered was control. But control did not stop the dull ache in his stomach. Outside his office, the world moved quietly around him. Somewhere below, an intern zipped open a lunchbox, unaware that a single small act, performed without strategy or expectation, was about to test a belief he had carried his entire life. The belief that kindness never comes without a price. The intern did not think of herself as brave. If anything, she thought of herself as careful. That was why she memorized everyone's coffee orders on her first week. That was why she volunteered for tasks no one wanted. That was why she never complained when people spoke over her in meetings. She was only allowed to observe. This internship was not a dream. It was a lifeline. She lived in a small apartment on the edge of the city, the kind where the heater rattled all night and the walls were thin enough to hear your neighbors breathe. Every morning, she woke before sunrise, pulled on the same neutral-colored clothes, and packed her lunch with the precision of someone who could not afford mistakes. Rice. Vegetables. Leftovers from the night before. Simple food. Honest food. She learned quickly that eating out with the other interns was not an option. $12 for a salad was not a casual choice when rent was due. So she ate quietly, usually alone, usually somewhere out of sight. What she did not know was that she was being watched. From his office above, the billionaire had begun noticing patterns. Not names, not faces. Patterns. Who arrived early and who did not. Who stayed late without being asked. Who complained when no one important was listening? Most people performed kindness only when it was visible. They laughed louder near managers. They nodded more eagerly when executives passed by. It was all predictable. Transactional. That was why the intern confused him. She did not try to impress anyone. She did not hover. She did not force smiles into rooms where she did not belong. She worked, she listened, and when she ate, she disappeared. The first time he noticed her lunchbox was accidental. He had stepped out of a meeting that went long, his patience already thin. His stomach tightened in protest, a reminder he ignored like everything else that asked for care. As he passed the break area, he caught sight of color where there should have been none. A small fabric lunchbox sat on a table. Faded blue, slightly worn, completely out of place. He slowed, just for a moment. Then, he saw her. Sitting on the far end of the table, shoulders slightly hunched, eating as if she did not want to be noticed. When someone else entered the room, she closed the lid halfway, instinctively guarding what little she had. Something about that stayed with him. He did not know why. The next day, he skipped lunch again. Not out of habit this time, but curiosity. He stayed at his desk, waiting, watching the clock, watching the office rhythm change as people filtered out for food. At exactly 12:15, the intern walked past his office, lunchbox in hand. She hesitated. He saw it clearly through the glass wall. That pause, that internal debate. She looked at his closed door, then down at her lunchbox, then back again. Her fingers tightened around the handle. She did not knock. She turned away. The billionaire frowned, confused by a feeling he did not immediately recognize. It was not disappointment. It was something sharper, something like being overlooked, except he had never cared about that before. The third day, everything shifted. He worked through lunch again, deliberately this time. When the familiar ache returned, he stood and opened his office door himself. He did not call for an assistant. He did not ask for food. He simply stepped into the hallway. The intern froze when she saw him. For a brief second, fear crossed her face. Real fear. The kind that came from knowing one wrong move could cost everything. She straightened instantly, clutching her lunchbox like evidence. "I am sorry," she said quickly, though she had done nothing wrong. He studied her. Not as an employee, not as an intern, but as a person. "You did not eat yet," he said. It was not a question. She swallowed. "I was about to." Silence stretched between them. The entire floor seemed to hold its breath. Then, without fully understanding why, she did something no one else in the building ever had. She lifted the lunchbox slightly and said, "If you want, it is still warm." No pitch, no expectation, no fear in her voice this time, just an offer. The billionaire stared at the lunchbox, at the simple kindness inside it, at the absence of strategy, and for the first time in years, something inside him hesitated. He did not take the lunchbox that day. Not yet. The billionaire thanked her with a single nod, brief and restrained, then returned to his office. The door closed softly behind him, leaving the intern standing in the hallway, unsure whether she had just crossed an invisible line or survived it. For the rest of the afternoon, she could not focus. Her hands moved automatically as she typed, filed, and listened. But her mind replayed the moment again and again. The way he had looked at the lunchbox, the way the silence had stretched, the way his eyes had not held irritation, but something closer to surprise. She told herself it meant nothing. Men like him did not change. Men like him did not notice interns. Men like him certainly did not accept food from people who had nothing to gain. The next morning, she packed her lunch as usual. She almost did not bring it. Her fingers hovered over the lunchbox zipper, doubt tightening her chest. She could already hear the warnings in her head. Do not stand out. Do not assume. Do not repeat what was not asked for. But in the end, habit won. She packed the food, zipped the lunchbox, and went to work. At 12:15, she ate at her desk. She did not disappear that day. She ate slowly, eyes down, trying not to notice the way the office felt different. From the top floor, the billionaire watched through the glass wall of his office. He had not planned to. He told himself he was working. He told himself he was focused. But his eyes kept drifting to the same spot, drawn by a color that did not belong in a room designed to erase personality. The lunchbox. He had not been able to stop thinking about it since the day before. Not because of hunger. Hunger was familiar. He knew how to ignore it. What unsettled him was the absence of calculation. No one had ever offered him something without first asking what he could give in return. Not colleagues. Not partners. Not family. Especially not family. He had learned early that generosity was a performance. Kindness was a currency. And love, if it existed at all, was conditional. So why had an intern, with no leverage and no protection, offered him her lunch? That afternoon, he left his office again. This time, he walked past her desk without stopping. She felt him before she saw him. Everyone did. The air shifted when he moved through a space. She straightened instinctively, heart racing, eyes fixed on her screen. He paused, not directly beside her. "You bring that every day," he said. She looked up, startled. "Yes, you make it yourself." "Yes." Another pause. "You do not have to," he said. She hesitated, then answered honestly. "I know." That was it. No explanation, no apology, no attempt to impress. He nodded once more and walked away. That night, he did not sleep well. Memories surfaced uninvited. A small kitchen, a tired woman cooking late into the night. Food stretched to feed more mouths than it should have. He had not thought about those days in years. He had buried them under numbers and acquisitions and silence. The following day, he made a decision. At 12 o'clock sharp, he cleared his schedule. No meetings, no calls, no assistants. At 12:15, the intern stood up with her lunchbox. She froze when she saw him waiting near her desk. "Come," he said simply. She did not ask where. She did not ask why. She followed. Inside his office, the door closed behind them. He gestured toward the table near the window. "Sit." Her hands trembled as she placed the lunchbox down. She did not open it. She waited. "May I?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. "Yes," she said softly. He opened the lunchbox himself. The smell filled the room. Warm. Familiar. Human. He took the first bite slowly. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. And for the first time in years, the billionaire ate a meal not because his body demanded it, but because someone, without reason or reward, had cared enough to offer it. The lunch ended without ceremony. No speeches, no revelations, no dramatic shift in the air. The billionaire closed the lunchbox carefully, as if it were something fragile, then slid it back across the table toward her. His expression was unreadable, but something in his posture had softened, not enough for anyone else to notice. Enough for her to feel. "Thank you," he said. Two simple words. Measured, controlled. But they stayed with her for the rest of the day. She returned to her desk in silence, her mind racing. She replayed the scene again and again, trying to understand what it meant. Had she crossed a boundary? Had she made a mistake? Or had something quietly changed without permission? The office noticed the smallest things. The billionaire did not call for his assistant after lunch. He did not rush into his afternoon meetings. He stayed in his office, staring out the window longer than usual. People whispered. The intern felt it immediately, the glances, the curiosity, the unspoken questions hanging in the air. She kept her head down and worked harder, as if effort alone could make her invisible again. The next day, she brought 2 lunchboxes. She told herself it was practical. One for herself, one just in case. At 12:15, she did not move from her desk. She waited. When he appeared, it was without announcement. No entourage, no tension. Just him, standing beside her desk, hands relaxed at his sides. "You did not come," he said. She looked up, surprised. "I did not want to assume." A pause. "You may," he replied. That was all. They ate together again that day. And the next, always quietly, always without witnesses, always without explanation. Sometimes he spoke, sometimes he did not. He asked where she was from, he asked what she studied. He asked how long she planned to stay if she was offered the chance. She answered honestly. Not strategically. She did not ask about his wealth. She did not ask about his past. She did not ask questions people usually asked men like him. She asked nothing at all unless he spoke first. That, more than anything, unsettled him. Days turned into a rhythm. Lunch at 12:15. 2 chairs by the window. 1 lunchbox, sometimes 2. The office began to notice a different kind of change. The billionaire no longer dismissed junior staff without listening. He corrected managers when they spoke carelessly. Once, he stopped in the hallway to let a delivery worker pass first. Small things. Almost unnoticeable, but power made even small shifts impossible to ignore. One afternoon, a senior manager cornered the intern near the copy machine. "You should be careful," he said with a thin smile. "People are starting to talk." She stiffened. "About what?" "About ambition," he replied. "About using kindness to get ahead." Her face burned. "I am not doing that." He shrugged. "That is what everyone says." That night, she almost did not pack the lunchboxes. Her hands shook as she stood in her kitchen, staring at the counter. Maybe she had been foolish. Maybe kindness had always been dangerous. Maybe this was where it ended. The next day, she did not bring food. At 12:15, the billionaire waited. At 12:30, he checked the clock. At 12:45, he stepped out of his office. She was still at her desk, working through lunch, her stomach tight with hunger and regret. "You did not eat," he said. She swallowed. "I thought it was better this way." "Better for whom?" She did not answer. He looked at her for a long moment, then spoke quietly. "Do not let other people decide what kindness costs you." That day, he ordered food for both of them. The next morning, the intern brought the lunchboxes back, and when she placed one on his desk, she noticed something she had never seen before. The slightest curve at the corner of his mouth, not a smile, but the beginning of one. The change did not happen all at once. It arrived in fragments, small enough that most people missed them, but steady enough that they could not be undone. The billionaire began to arrive later than usual. Not by much. 5 minutes. Sometimes 10. Enough to notice if you were watching closely. Enough to suggest that something in his routine had loosened its grip. Lunch became a fixed point in his day. At 12:15, without fail, he closed his laptop. He silenced his phone. He stood up, regardless of who was speaking or what meeting was scheduled. No one questioned it. No one dared. Inside his office, the intern waited by the window, lunchboxes already placed on the table. She never assumed which one he would take. Sometimes he chose the one she packed for herself. Sometimes he insisted she eat first. These small negotiations, quiet and unobserved, became their own language. He began asking questions he had not asked anyone in years. Not about performance. Not about results. Not about loyalty. He asked why she chose her field of study. He asked what she wanted to do if money was not a concern. He asked what scared her most about failing. She answered honestly, even when the truth made her uncomfortable. She spoke about debt, about fear, about watching doors close before she ever reached them. She did not dramatize it. She did not ask for sympathy. She spoke as someone who had learned to survive without being seen. He listened. That alone was dangerous. The office noticed before she did. People stopped interrupting her. Managers began assigning her real tasks instead of busy work. Invitations appeared in her inbox that had not existed before. She tried to refuse them at first, worried about appearances, but the billionaire dismissed her concerns with a single sentence. "You did not earn this by asking," he said. "You earned it by being who you are." That sentence followed her home. It echoed in her head as she lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling of her apartment. No one had ever framed her worth that way before. Not teachers, not supervisors, not family. For the billionaire, the shift was more unsettling. He caught himself noticing things he used to ignore. The exhaustion in junior employees' faces. The hesitation before someone spoke in meetings. The difference between respect and fear. Once, during a board call, A senior executive mocked a junior analyst for asking a question. The billionaire cut the call short. "Do not confuse silence with incompetence," he said coldly. "We will hear the question." The room went still. The intern heard about it an hour later from 3 different people. That was when she understood something important. This was no longer just about lunch. The kindness she had offered without thought was changing the way power moved around her. And that terrified her. The rumors grew louder. "She thinks she is special. She is playing a long game. No one gets that close without paying a price." One afternoon, she found her desk cleared. Not officially, not maliciously, just empty. Her nameplate gone. Her chair moved. She stood there, frozen, lunchboxes in hand. A senior manager approached, voice smooth and careful. "You have been reassigned," he said. "Temporary, of course. It is better this way." "For whom?" she asked. "For everyone," he replied. She did not argue. She never had. She picked up her things and moved to the far end of the floor, near the emergency exit. The lunchboxes stayed closed that day. At 12:15, the billionaire noticed immediately. He noticed the empty chair by the window. He noticed the absence of color on the table. He noticed the quiet had returned in a way he did not like. He found her an hour later. "You were moved," he said. "Yes." "Did you ask for this?" "No." He nodded once, then turned and walked away. That afternoon, an internal email went out. The reassignment was reversed. The manager was placed on review. No explanation was given. The office buzzed. The intern sat at her desk, hands shaking, staring at the lunchboxes. For the first time since she had arrived, she wondered if kindness had finally crossed into danger. And for the first time, the billionaire realized something even more unsettling. He was no longer observing a test of character. He was choosing a side. The office never returned to the way it had been before. After the reassignment was reversed, people no longer pretended nothing was happening. They watched. They measured every interaction. Every word exchanged between the billionaire and the intern felt heavier now, as if it carried meaning beyond what was said. The intern felt it most. She began arriving earlier than ever, leaving later than everyone else. She double-checked her work, then checked it again. She stopped laughing at small jokes. She stopped eating anywhere except behind closed doors. The lunchboxes still came, but they felt different in her hands. One afternoon, as they sat by the window, the billionaire spoke without looking at her. "You are afraid," he said. She froze. "No, I am not." He turned then, studying her face with the same precision he once reserved for contracts and numbers. "You are," he said calmly. "You have been afraid since the day they moved your desk." She swallowed. There was no point denying it. "I do not want this to cost me everything," she said quietly. "I cannot afford to be noticed for the wrong reasons." "Will," he considered her words. "For most people," he said, "being noticed is the reward. For you, it is the risk." She nodded. That night, she did not sleep. Her mind filled with questions she could not answer. Was she being naive? Was she part of something she did not fully understand? Was kindness still kindness if it changed power? The next morning, an email arrived in her inbox. A meeting request. Private. From him. Her hands trembled as she accepted. Inside his office, he gestured for her to sit, but did not take his usual seat. Instead, he remained standing, arms crossed, gaze distant. "I am going to offer you something," he said. "And I want you to say no if you feel pressured." Her chest tightened. "What kind of offer?" "A role," he replied. "A real one. Paid. With responsibility." Her breath caught. "Why me?" He did not answer immediately. "Because I trust you," he said at last. The words felt too heavy for the room. She looked down at her hands. "People will say it is because of you. They already do." "I do not want favors," she said. "I want to earn what I am given." "You have," he said simply. She shook her head. "I do not know where I fit in your world." He stepped closer. "Not too close. Just enough." "That is the point," he said. "You do not fit. You change it." Silence settled between them. When she left the office, she did not accept the offer. Not yet. She needed time. The rumors exploded by the end of the day. She turned him down. She thinks she has leverage. She is testing him now. None of it was true. At lunch the next day, she did not bring the boxes. She did not come to his office. She ate alone in a stairwell, heart pounding, fighting the urge to cry. She told herself this was the right thing to do. Distance was safety. Distance was control. At 12:30, footsteps echoed on the stairs. He sat beside her without asking. "You did not come," he said. "I needed space." He nodded. "So did I. Once." She looked at him then, really looked. Not the billionaire. Not the executive. But the man who had learned early that power was easier than trust. "I am not trying to change you," she said. "I know," he replied. "That is why you already have." He stood and extended his hand, not to pull her up, but to offer choice. "Whatever you decide," he said, "it will be yours. Dollar, talkete, reasons, unda." As he walked away, the intern realized something that frightened her more than the rumors, more than the power imbalance, more than the risk of failure. For the first time, the billionaire was not testing her. He was waiting. The breaking point came on a Friday. It always did. The office was louder than usual, buzzing with anticipation for the quarterly review. Senior leadership filled the main conference room. Assistants lined the walls. Junior staff hovered near the doors, notebooks clutched tight, hoping to disappear. The intern sat near the end of the table, exactly where she had been told to sit. She had brought no lunchbox that day. Her stomach was tight, but not from hunger. From instinct. From the quiet certainty that something was about to go wrong. The billionaire entered last. The room rose to its feet. Chairs scraped back in unison. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. He acknowledged no one, took his seat at the head of the table, and nodded once. "Begin," he said. The presentation moved quickly. Numbers, projections, applause at the right moments. Everything felt rehearsed, until it was her turn. She had been asked to prepare a short analysis. Nothing major. 5 minutes at most. She stood, heart pounding, and walked to the screen. She had practiced all week. Her voice was steady at first. She explained her assumptions clearly, carefully, choosing every word as if it mattered. Because it did. Halfway through, a senior manager interrupted her. "Let us pause here," he said, smiling thinly. "I am curious." She stopped. "Did this idea come from you?" he continued, "or was it suggested?" The room went quiet. "It was my analysis," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "Interesting, because it aligns closely with conversations held at the executive level. Conversations you were not part of." A few people shifted uncomfortably. She felt heat rush to her face. "I did not have access to those conversations." "Of course," he said lightly. "Then, perhaps this is another example of inspiration." The implication hung in the air. The billionaire watched in silence. The manager continued. "We should be careful not to confuse proximity with qualification. Ambition can be misleading when it disguises itself as kindness." Her hands trembled. She opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Then the billionaire spoke. "Finish," he said calmly. She did. She completed the presentation, every word harder than the last. When she sat down, her legs nearly gave out. The meeting moved on as if nothing had happened. But something had. Afterward, in the hallway, the manager stopped her. "You should understand how this looks," he said quietly. "People are noticing." She met his gaze. "I did nothing wrong," he smiled. "That depends on who is watching." That night, she packed her things. Not dramatically. Not in anger. Just quietly. She wrote her resignation letter twice, deleted it twice, then saved it without sending. The next morning, she did not come in early. She did not bring a lunchbox. She arrived at 9, sat at her desk, and waited. At 10:15, an email went out company-wide. "Mandatory meeting, all staff, main floor." Whispers spread instantly. When the billionaire stepped onto the floor, his presence alone silenced the room. He did not sit. "I have observed a pattern," he began. "One that confuses influence with merit and power with entitlement." His gaze moved deliberately, landing on the senior manager. Public humiliation is not leadership, he continued. And kindness is not a strategy. It is a standard. The manager stiffened. I will not allow talent to be undermined because it comes from unexpected places, the billionaire said. Nor will I tolerate fear being used as a management tool. The room held its breath. Effective immediately, he said. There will be changes. The manager was escorted out before anyone could react. No explanation. No debate. The billionaire turned then, his eyes finding the intern. This ends now, he said. In that moment, she understood. The test was over, and the cost of kindness had finally been paid. The silence after the announcement felt heavier than the meeting itself. No one spoke as the billionaire walked away. No one followed. The office remained frozen, caught between shock and relief, unsure whether to breathe or brace for more. The intern stood where she was, heart racing, hands cold. She had not expected that ending. She had imagined consequences. Quiet ones. Professional ones. A recommendation withheld. A contract not renewed. She had even prepared herself to leave with dignity, believing that sometimes survival meant knowing when to step away. She had not prepared for this. For the rest of the day, no one questioned her. No one whispered when she passed. The attention that once felt sharp and dangerous softened into something else. Respect, maybe. Or caution. At 5:30, she gathered her things. There was no lunchbox that day. As she reached the elevator, a message appeared on her phone. From him, please come by before you leave. She hesitated only a second before turning back. Inside his office, the light was lower than usual. The city outside the windows glowed gold and gray, stretched thin by dusk. He stood near the window, jacket off, tie loosened. You should not feel obligated to stay, he said without turning around. I know, she replied. He nodded. I wanted you to hear this privately. He turned then, his expression serious but unguarded in a way she had never seen. I did not intervene because you were kind to me, he said. I intervened because you were treated unfairly. That distinction matters, she said quietly. It does, he agreed, and it will continue to matter. She took a breath. People will think this is because of our lunches. They will, he said, and they will be wrong. He walked to his desk and placed a folder in front of her. This is the offer I mentioned, he said. It is formal. Transparent? Reviewed. She did not open it. I am grateful, she said, but I need to be sure. Of what? That I am not becoming a symbol, she said. That I am not the exception people resent. He studied her for a long moment. Change always creates resentment, he said, but it also creates opportunity. Not just for you. She finally opened the folder. The role was real. The responsibilities were clear. The compensation fair. There were no hidden favors. No shortcuts. I will accept, she said, on one condition. I said. He raised an eyebrow. Name it. I want my first project to focus on people who are usually overlooked, she said. Interns. Junior staff. Support teams. A pause. Then he smiled. Not fully. Not openly. But enough. That is exactly why I chose you, he said. The following weeks passed quickly. She moved desks again. Not to a corner. Not to the center. Just somewhere she belonged. She worked harder than ever, but with purpose instead of fear. People listened when she spoke, some reluctantly, some eagerly. The lunches returned, though less often now. Sometimes she brought them, sometimes he did. Once, he brought 2 identical containers and said, almost awkwardly, I tried. She laughed before she could stop herself. He froze, surprised. Then he laughed too. It was not loud. It was not polished. But it was real. And in that moment, she understood the full arc of what had happened. Kindness had not softened power. It had redirected it. And the man who never smiled had not been changed by a lunchbox. He had been reminded of who he was before the world taught him to stop. The story did not end with applause. It ended quietly, the way real change often does. Months later, the office no longer held its breath when the billionaire walked through the doors. People still respected him. They still moved with purpose when he entered a room. But fear no longer led the way. He greeted people now. Not everyone. Not always. But enough that it mattered. The intern was no longer an intern. Her title sat cleanly beneath her name, no longer temporary, no longer conditional. She occupied a role she had earned, one shaped by responsibility rather than proximity. She spoke in meetings without rehearsing every sentence in her head. She challenged ideas when they deserved it. She listened when others spoke, especially those who rarely were. The lunches continued, though they changed with time. Sometimes they ate together by the window, watching the city move below them. Sometimes they did not eat together at all. Each lost in work, exchanging only a glance that said enough. The lunchbox remained. It sat on a shelf in his office now, no longer used, no longer needed. Faded blue. Slightly worn. Untouched. Not as a trophy. Not as a reminder of debt. As a symbol. One afternoon, a new intern hesitated outside his office, clutching a paper bag with both hands. She looked nervous, uncertain. The billionaire noticed. He stepped out before she could turn away. "Yes?" he asked. She swallowed. "I was told you skip lunch sometimes." He looked at the bag. Then, at her. "I do," he said. She lifted it slightly. "I brought extra." He paused. Then he smiled. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, the woman who had once eaten alone on stairwells packed her bag to leave. She passed his office and stopped. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" he asked. "For choosing fairness when it mattered," she replied. "For proving that power does not have to be cold." He considered her words. "You were the one who reminded me," he said. "I just decided not to forget again." They walked out of the building together, not as billionaire and intern, not as benefactor and beneficiary, but as two people shaped by a shared moment of honesty. Outside, the city buzzed as it always had. Cars honked. People hurried. Life continued, unaware of the small revolution that had taken place inside a glass tower. The lunchbox had never been about food. It had been about dignity, about seeing someone without measuring what they could offer, about kindness given freely and power returned responsibly. And somewhere between a simple meal and a difficult choice, a man who had built an empire learned something wealth never taught him. Smiles are not signs of weakness, they are signs of connection. If this story moved you, take a moment to think about the smallest act of kindness you have received or given, without expecting anything in return. Sometimes, that is where everything begins.